Hello, Kansas and Western fans. Today we're going to do another one of those videos about how and why I designed a scene on my layout. And today we're going to cover Hunta Yard. This is the first yard that I built on the layout. And as you can see, I've thrown a whole bunch of track down in a small space. I wanted to have a yard on each level of the layout, and I wanted to make sure the yards had plenty of room for the layout. And this is the longest wall that I could use for the lower level for this purpose and where it made sense. On my layout, the yards are located more or less in the middle of each level so that operations can go in either direction. And that way I can follow some prototypical movements out of each yard. So to start with, the track that's closest to the wall you see there is the main line. And you can see the train that's parked down on this end. And we spoke about this if you've seen the Lamar video about how it had to swing wide out of Lamar to make sure it was as broad a curve as I could get. So it wasn't too crammed in there. And then you can see it just basically follows that back wall all the way down as close as I was comfortable making it. I wasn't going to put anything on the back wall except for just a commercial backdrop, so I didn't need to leave a lot of space. But that way, with the main line out of the way, it does two things. One, it gives me the maximum amount of space for the rest of the yard, and number two, it allows mainline trains to pass without interfering with the yard. I didn't want to have the main line run in the foreground where you see the front edge here, because as yard operators are switching trains in the yard, I didn't want to have them worrying about reaching over active trains passing by, trying to throw turnouts or set couplers, and then risk knocking a moving train by, especially if it maybe had a random high intermodal or something like that was a little bit taller than what the operator might be ready for, and then you got a big derailment on your hands. So from this point, I'm basically just going to explain the purpose for each track. There is a purpose for each track. It's not just fill into the space with as much as possible. So I'm going to go into that. All right, so I already mentioned that the track closest to the wall is the main line. The one next to it is the inbound, outbound, or arrival departure track. So trains that would be moving on the main line that needed to stop in this yard would pull off onto this track where the locomotives would park, and then they have the option at either end to uncouple from the train and then use this boulevard track, which you're looking straight down that now, all the way to this outer edge so they could maneuver all the way over here to the engine facility. And this boulevard track serves two purposes. It's a place for locomotives to escape trains and do runarounds, and it provides an area or a way for the switcher to work both ends of the yard. All right, so we've got the arrival departure track. At each end is a switch lead, and you can see that there it joins with the main line again, and then the switch lead bends around to this end. Now this is where I had to make a compromise on both ends. Anybody who knows anything about how to design a rail yard will tell you that you want your switch lead to be as long as your longest yard track. And I just wasn't going to be able to make that happen. This curve here, where you see the track in front of the train, is the other switch lead. And you can see the cars parked there. That's about how long that switch lead is. And that is not as long as this third track from the wall. And that was just a compromise I was going to have to make. And sometimes there's just nothing you can do about it. So whoever switches this yard is going to have to keep that in mind. Now down here at, we'll call it the left end of the yard, it would be the west end actually, you see this curved switch lead is much shorter than the other one. And that is because I really just wanted room for a locomotive to be able to switch off the train, or consist actually, and then be able to access this trunk line that bypasses all the tracks and then reaches the boulevard track on the outer edge so that it can backtrack again into the engine facility. Having switch leads on both ends of the yard was an afterthought. I was just going to have a stub end yard with all the stubs being at this end and then the single switch lead down there. One of my subscribers, commenters, viewers early on suggested that I might regret that, and I think he was definitely right, because it would have been just a pain to switch from one end of the yard and negate basically the space that I had down here, which it isn't much. But when you're figuring about switching maybe these shorter yard tracks, you don't need as much of a switch lead, because this lead here that connects all the tracks adds to your switch lead's length. So you can keep that in mind. And so I'm very glad that I went with a double-ended yard, even though I didn't think I had the space. I do, and it's very helpful for switching. All right, moving along. So we spoke about the one that's closest to the wall. There's the main line. And you got the arrival departure track. And then you have a series of body tracks. And that's, if you count here, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 body tracks. Not counting this boulevard track, which you always want to keep clear so you can perform runarounds and move locomotives from one end to another of a train. The body tracks will be, or classification yard tracks, whatever you want to call them. That's where the trains or the cars, strings of cars, are parked by the switch engine for sorting. So that's the point of those. It doesn't mean they're always going to be full, but that's the point of those, is to have trains parked there so you can switch those in and out and make new trains and tear down other ones. I already spoke about this outer boulevard track here, and you can see how it connects to everything else. At this end, I wanted to copy some of the prototype features of Junta Yard and have a transload facility, a transload dock, and you kind of see how I have that set up there, so you can load flat cars with vehicles that you can drive up the ramp and right onto the car, or you can use a forklift to load things on and off cars or into box cars. So that's the point of that. And then I want to have a very small single track maintenance of way yard for equipment of that nature to be parked when it's not in use. And then some extra rails and ties and things that will be piled up in this area. So that's the point of these. And then this outer track here is just an extra storage track for use by the switcher if he just needs to move some cars out of the way. Rotating back to the other end, you have the switch engine, or the engine facility. And the way my yard is operated is there are several road names that use this as a junction. In reality, Junta Yard was just a Santa Fe yard. I'm using it for Southern Pacific Power, Santa Fe, and Durango, or not Durango, Denver and Rio Grande Western Power. And then, of course, I have this R.J. Corman locomotive that I use as my maintenance of way locomotive for moving those trains. So anyway, with these three different sets of power that I was going to have, I wanted to have plenty of tracks to park extra locomotives for switching out trains. So that's the point of that. And then, of course, I have a basic car repair shop, loco repair shop. You can basically use it for whatever you like, but I wanted to represent that. And so that's the point of that. There were two other features that I wanted to recreate from the prototype on the Junta Yard. And that was this highway bridge that is the east end, in reality, that goes over the yard. And then this King Arroyo that I've planned, which will be a short trestle bridge that will encompass both of these tracks. In reality, there were actually two yards, two classification yards, one next to each other, and this arroyo was planted in between them. And I don't have any room for 2 yards end to end, but that's the point of this here. Another compromise I had to make in order to allow myself plenty of space, and one thing I should mention is all of the turnouts in this entire yard are number 6 turnouts. So when you've settled on a particular type of turnout, that creates other restrictions for you in terms of angle of attack on how the tracks lead from each turnout. Now, if I had gone and used a bunch of number 4s, then I've kind of got maybe quite a bit more track laid with a tighter angle. But I choose to go with to go with number 6s, just so it looked a little bit better and operated a little more smoothly and accommodated some of my longer rolling stock. So when I was talking about compromises, you can see the main line in the back wraps around and into my next scene, which is Pueblo. Obviously, La Junta and Pueblo are not this close in reality, and so I tried to create some separation with the switch lead here and the main line so I could plant some scenery in the middle and then hopefully block from view, at least from ground level perspective, the La Junta Yard scene from the Pueblo scene. And it's just penciled in there for now. I obviously haven't built it yet. I just have some trees standing in as a reminder. But I plan to build basically a hillside that's tall enough that you will not be able to see the main line wrap around there or much of the trackage beyond, at least to about this point. And that just helps to create a scene separation so it doesn't look like all of these things just run together. I guess that's about it for my explanation of how and why I designed La Junta Yard the way it is. I'll be happy to field any questions if any of you have any, or make any comments. And definitely, if you have ideas on how the yard could have been improved, my track is all laid. I'm not likely to change it, but for anybody else that's watching, go ahead and leave those comments because others might learn from those and might be able to make some better decisions about their yard. So thanks for watching. I appreciate any questions and comments. You all have a good holiday.